We tend to equate human progress with pouring concrete. The story of civilization is usually told as a triumph of settling down, building permanent structures, drawing hard borders, and leaving behind the primitive urge to wander. This bias against mobility was so deeply baked into modern governments that they actually weaponized it. In 1871, the British colonial government in India looked at millions of people who moved for a living and passed the Criminal Tribes Act. They declared that living without a fixed address meant you were genetically predisposed to crime, effectively outlawing mobility itself. But looking at mobility as aimless wandering misses the point entirely. What if constant movement is actually a highly calculated, complex technology for survival? Welcome to pastoralism. It's a global operating system used by millions of people to extract resources from the most unforgiving, extreme environments on Earth, places where traditional farming would fail almost instantly.
To understand how humans actually conquered the margins of the map, we have to stop looking at the borders drawn on it, and instead look under the hood of the pastoralist machine. The core engine of this machine runs entirely on biology. Pastoralists use domesticated animal muscle power to convert sparse, unfarmable vegetation spread over hundreds of miles into high-density, usable energy, like meat, milk, and transport. To keep that engine running, they rely on two main algorithms of movement. This data map shows the first, nomadism. It might look erratic, but it is a highly responsive system, dictated entirely by the shifting availability of water and fodder. This vertical cross-section shows the second pattern, transhumance. This is a cyclical loop. Herds are pushed up to cool highland valleys in the summer and brought back down to warmer lowlands in the winter. Whether erratic or cyclical, these movements are never random. They are precise ecological calculations designed to maximize resource yield without destroying the land they rely on. Because this system requires constant mobility, the concept of fencing off land is an active threat to survival. Pastures have to be held as common property. This demands a highly egalitarian social structure where groups prioritize shared access and mutual obligations over hoarding territory. They also run a fascinating exchange program with settled farmers, known as nomad-peasant symbiosis. Mobile herders trade goods and let their livestock graze on fallow fields, providing vital manure to the farmers in exchange for calories. The pastoral machine relies entirely on this intricate web of communal sharing and trade. It is a code that works flawlessly until an incompatible system is forced upon it. That collision happened with the expansion of the modern colonial state and industrial capitalism. These systems were obsessed with drawing permanent lines and extracting taxes. Look at the wasteland rules imposed by the British Raj in India. Colonial officials viewed any unfarmed, communal grazing land as unproductive waste and began seizing it to allocate for cash crop agriculture. Enclosing this land instantly broke the pastoral algorithm. It severed the migration routes the herds relied on to survive the dry seasons. And then the state froze the clock. Take the Gaddis of Kangra, who herd flocks through the Himalayas. They traditionally based their movements on natural environmental markers, like waiting for the heady mountain snows to clear. The colonial government ignored this completely, imposing fixed calendar dates for entry and exit into forests, backed by rigid tax passes. If the snow was late but the permit expired, the herders were trapped. Enforcing rigid borders and strict clock time acted as a systemic sabotage. It disabled the survival logic herders had relied on for centuries, making their way of life physically impossible to execute. The physical fallout was immediate. Restricted movement forced pastoralists to overgraze shrinking patches of land. Without time for vegetation to recover, the land deteriorated, and herds starved in massive numbers. We can see the ultimate endpoint of this crash in South Africa, with the Khoikhoi people. Along with their grazing rights, the Khoikhoi lost their language, their political independence, and eventually their cultural identity as they were absorbed into the colonial machine. The modern state systematically dismantled an ancient, highly functional way of life. They targeted this system specifically because its inherent mobility made it impossible to contain or tax. Traditional subsistence pastoralism was devastated by these policies, but the mechanics of the system evolved to survive within modern capitalism. Today's commercial ranchers operate with the exact same high-risk, mobile strategies as their ancestors. They've just swapped out human runners for helicopters and heavy machinery, leveraging private property to feed global markets. It proves that we have to stop equating human progress solely with the permanence of concrete buildings and drawn borders. Sometimes, the most resilient, ingenious, and sophisticated human systems are the ones specifically designed to never stand still.